Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. My name is Barbara Bozak, and I welcome you in the name of the Grassroots Task Force of the NGO Committee for Social Development to this side event, Still Left Behind, Views of SDG Implementation from the Grassroots. The fact that many are left behind is clearly an ongoing issue. In his report for this year's Commission for Social Development, the Secretary General notes that although the 2020 agenda pledged to leave no one behind, I quote, at the midway point for implementation, half of the world's people are being left behind. We recognize that those in power in governments and the UN often have little or no idea of what is the lived experience at the grassroots. As our name suggests, the Grassroots Task Force has as its goal to bring to the UN the voice of these people, the people on the ground, those who are most often invisible to those in positions of power. Today we are doing this with responses to 4 questions we posed recently. The first, since 2015, how have conditions for living improved, worsened, or have they stayed about the same in your area? Secondly, what is most needed in your area to improve the quality of life? We then asked what is working, a current program that is having success in working to achieve one or more of the SDGs. And finally, we asked what message they would like to deliver to the UN, both their hopes and what they would like government and UN officials to hear. You will hear what they said, first in a synthesis of written responses, then followed by 3 short videos from 3 different continents. After that, we will hear from 2 panelists who will share their reflections on this topic. We will begin with a synthesis of the written responses presented by Diana Dupuy-Faustin, an intern at the United Nations with the International Association of Schools of Social Work. Diana holds a master's degree in healthcare administration, and this year will be completing her master's degree in social work. Diana will be using a PowerPoint to illustrate her words. Diana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Barbara. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody who's on the Zoom meeting today. Welcome. It is an honor and privilege to be presenting and speaking with you today on this issue of the implementation of the SDGs. Again, my name is Diana, and I will be presenting on the implementation of the SDGs, hearing from the grassroots level. So the survey process and how we came about to do this project is in advance of the SDG summit that took place back in September of last year. We sent an invitation for comments on SDG experiences to NGOs or non-governmental organization operating at the grassroots level, local level. We invited respondents to submit brief video statements as well as written statements. And in the surveys, we asked 4 simple questions on their views on progress toward meeting the SDGs or the lack of progress there. What is needed, and an example of a program or policy that is working, and what statement that they would like to make to the government and UN officials gathered at the SDG summit. It was not a scientific survey, but a request for sharing at the for those at the grassroots, which means the people who are often left behind. Sorry, this. We received about 49 responses in total, including about 25 written responses, as well as 24 video responses, spanning across 29 countries in 6 continents. My report today will focus solely on the written responses spanning across countries like Chad, Indonesia, United Kingdom, and the US. This map that you're looking at represents all the countries that we've received responses from. The written videos, the written statement, I apologize, and the written and the video statements. This map represents the countries that we received written statements from. As you can see, Mozambique, United States, Jamaica are among those countries that we got written videos on. This water represents all the issues raised by the responses that we've gotten. The larger words that you're looking at or the ones that were mentioned frequently, such as education, climate change, poverty. Let's start with education. When asked what if the conditions were improved or worsened or stayed the same, in Chad, when we go over to Chad, they said that the conditions are worsened because families cannot pay for school fees due to the poverty level that is too high. But when we move over to India, the reason why the conditions have worsened is due to the lack of enrollment of women and girls in schools throughout the whole country. However, they both said to improve the quality of life, education is important. Educating the poor, the underprivileged, and the indigenous people, as well as providing skills acquisition trainings so that they can educate the population. To them, that would improve the quality of life. And one message that they have, both countries in messages to the SDG summit, is that education cannot wait. Every child living in both rural and urban areas deserves quality education. Indigenous people deserve quality education, the poor and the underprivileged. So that's the message that they sent over to the SDG Summit 2023. Now we're gonna hear a voice from someone from in India. Her name is Libania.
Education for all living, no one behind, training scheme for the underprivileged and those kept poor to decrease unemployment of youth and environmental sanitation in the urban slums.
So basically, he's saying that education should include everyone. Poor, rich, underprivileged, privileged, and anybody, women and girls. Every people, every person deserves quality education. Now we're going to talk about gender equality. When we go over to Burkina Faso, they said that the conditions have worsened due to terrorist attacks. Now, these attacks caused the movement of people that are quasi-permanent until today. From March 31st, 2023, the Kaya region received about 400,093 people of internal displaced persons living in conditions. So living in conditions that are unbearable to them. But for them to improve the quality of life, they say that all women should have more consideration in the Burkinabe society, that women's work should be recognized and valued, that women should have the same right as men to the land and the family heritage, economic and legal autonomy for women. It is women who are capable to better safeguard and protect the environment, and that school is mandatory for all children born in Burkina Faso. Their message is that when all women have jobs, living conditions will change in our region by 2030, says Sister Marie. Now, in terms of bottom-up development, in the goal of bottom-up development, we see that in New Zealand, and I'm trying to correct the name, Tefagnanoi Atara, hope if somebody's from New Zealand, I hope that I pronounce it correctly, said that their conditions have worsened because the wages of the cost of living is too high. And it's the same, and to improve the quality of life is the wages that they earn should reflect the cost of living. And if we go over to Goma, to the Democratic Republic of Congo, their conditions have also worsened because of the resurgence of armed militia and the inability of national forces to arrest them. And secondary effects of those conflicts, such as food crisis. So in both situations, we see that their conditions have worsened. Their message to the SDG Summit is that they need to fund local initiative. They need to connect with the people from the bottom up. They need to invest on infrastructures, on roads, and in industrial and agricultural development policy that responds to the need of the population with respect to the environment. And again, their message to the SDG is that they need to support private initiatives from the local people and support local businesses. Now we're gonna hear the voice of the president of En Avant les Enfants from the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Le cadre, les conditions et les objectifs d'un développement digne, impactant et pérenne ne doivent pas être imposés d'en haut et ou de l'extérieur, mais bien proposés, animés et gérés par les populations locales d'en bas, qui sont soutenues, appuyées en dehors de tout conflit d'intérêts ou d'agenda caché.
So for those who don't speak French, he says the framework, conditions, and objectives of a dignified, impactful, and sustainable development must not be imposed from above and or from outside, but rather proposed, driven, and managed by local people from below, who are supported without any conflict of interest or hidden agendas. Now we move over to the United Kingdom, and their conditions also have worsened, just like in Mozambique, due to housing shortage. In the UK, there is a considerable number of asylum seekers seeking accommodations. So therefore, there is a shortage on housing. And in Mozambique, since 2015, the conditions have worsened in the region due to the rural exodus of people. The neighborhood is super inhabited, where many families had to divide their space to rent to the other people from other areas who are coming in numbers, from 5 to 10 tenants as a way to earn some money for self-sustaining. There is a lot of unemployment, a lot of crimes and robberies and drug consumptions from people living and sleeping on the streets. And to improve the quality of life, they said better housing conditions. So we see the similarities from Mozambique as well as Liverpool, United Kingdom. And their message is provide better resources for the people who are living there. Better distribution of resources as we see in Mozambique, such as the land, the energy resources, and mineral, better education. And now we'll hear the voice of Sister Eleanor from Liverpool, United Kingdom.
Countries should be free to plant their own native seeds instead of government dictating a monoculture that relies on costly fertilizer. Countries should be free to plant their own native seeds instead of government.
Okay. Now we're gonna go over to the theme of provision of services for disadvantaged groups. In Jamaica, in Moran Bay, Jamaica, one of their problems that they're encountering is that there is no recycling systems, and conditions have worsened there as well. There is trash thrown in the river, in the street, and therefore they have no recycling system to better their life. And to improve the quality of life, Meno stated that many things stem from poverty in the area. If there would be a development, it would make a difference in services, supplies, and basic needs of water, roads, and safety. And his message to the SDG Summit is that they need to visit poor areas, meaning government, and increase services such as roads, water, electricity, and health services. But when we move over to Zambia, conditions were improved. Not much, but they have improved in terms of conditions. The road conditions are better. There have been constructions of more clinics and hospitals and schools. However, to improve the quality of life, they demand that hospitals and clinics have medicines and that schools have more supplies. But one thing that they want the most is that when they start a project on roads, on schools, on clinics and hospitals, they want to see that completed, not just starting, but they want to see that completed. So we see that things are moving slowly, better in Zambia, but they want to see it get better. Their message is continue to infrastructure projects such as roads and they need more medicines in hospitals and clinics. I'm sorry, hold on one second. Okay, I am so sorry, okay. Now we move over to the theme of climate and the environment. In West Kalimantan, Indonesia, their conditions have also worsened because of the bauxite mine constructions in the area. It is getting worse because bauxite mine is destructive to the environment, causing air and food pollution. When we move over to Illinois, United States, things also have worsened in terms of heat and weather changes. For example, they see warmer temperatures in winter months between December and February. And they said that to improve quality of life, they need better education on decreasing the plastic use. Their message is over in Indonesia, their message is to stop the production of fossil fuel energy. And over in Illinois, they said that they need to make a treaty on the use of plastics and fossil fuels, focus their efforts, especially on quality water and land for women and migrant and marginalized countries so that they can have food. Lastly, the theme that was prevalent was peace. In North Kivu, from the Democratic Republic of Congo, things also have worsened due to war that caused people to lose their lives and others to move out of their homes to go to unfamiliar places, which result in hunger, atrocity, and manipulation. And to improve their quality of life, they want peace. But if you go to Kinshasa, things also have worsened over there because of inflation that increased by 100%. And they said that to improve their quality of life, they need to build roads so that they can communicate between provinces. To improve their lives, they mentioned over in North Kivu, Democratic Republic of Congo, they said that their hope is that by 2030, we will be at peace, that the UN use all possible methods to dissuade those who have brought war to Kivu. The SDGs will follow when there is peace. Over in Kinshasa, their message is, we need peace in the eastern part of the country. We are tired of the international complicity in plundering the Democratic Republic of Congo's resources. Now, I'm going to read these quotes from several people from across countries, and we need to reflect on what they're saying. The first quote is, what is needed in my region to improve the quality of life is the construction of roads, more hospitals, more jobs for young people. The second quote reads, many things stem from the poverty in the area. If there would be a development, it would make a difference in services, supplies, and basic needs of water, roads, and safety. The third quote reads, in my area, we need medicine in hospitals and clinics and learning materials for pupils in schools. When we read these quotes, we see several communities around the world need basic needs such as water, roads, and safety. and those needs are fundamental to a progressing society. This quote reads, "Let's go green and win our lives off plastic. Promote a simple lifestyle, use less, preserve resources, and promote greater eco-sustainable means of transport, food system, and usage of resources in daily life." This quote to me show how our actions play a major role in climate change. And in that same capacity, we have the possibility to change our ways to protect our planet. And lastly, may Mozambique be a country in peace, national unity, and a government capable of running the country wisely and prudently abound. Like Mozambique, the world needs peace. Peace is the way to attain the SDGs by 2030. Now, those are some pictures from around the world that we took. This picture is taken from Zambia. Also from Zambia. This is from India. And this picture is from Mozambique. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Diana. You certainly brought to our minds the fact that these difficulties in achieving the SDGs affect every country, be it developed countries, developing countries, wealthy countries, poorer countries, and some of the same issues abound across the globe. That of need for education, gender equality, development, letting the people from the bottom have their voice and drive the development as well. So thank you very, very much. That was an excellent presentation, and I'm sure we give us much food for thought. So we've just heard a synthesis of the written responses and would now like to give you the opportunity to hear from Grassroots members in their own voices. And they will join us through recorded videos, and we have 3 of them. We begin with a video from India, listening to the testimony of 2 young women from a poor area of Delhi. Their names are Anshi and Shali. They're both alumni of the Life Project for Youth training program. They're talking about women's rights in their daily lives and the place of women in their community. And you will hear Shali share her story, explaining how her boyish look is one way to try to have the same opportunities as men in her society. So first video, please.
Sangam Vihar. This place is very populated. This colony is biggest in the whole Asia. All type of people are living. Sangam Vihar is one of the most affordable location in South Delhi.
Hello, I am Shelly. I'm 20 years old. I come from in Delhi in India and I'm living in Sangam Vihar. In India, girls not going to job, stay home and cook for everyone. We have to get the married, but girls not choose the husband and boys choose wife.
Gender-based issues are in India: rape, sexual harassment, insult of modesty, kidnapping, uneven action of education, lack of employment issue, job secretions, culture registration, and share household chores.
We have to have long hair, makeup, stay home. That's why my boy look. Cut my hair, not makeup and boy look. Why? To have same power as boy. In 2030, I hope that we have more freedom. I hope girls be brave, go against families.
If I have a chance to change some rules, so I would like to change the education system, especially in Sangam Vihar. So many people don't know about their rights for education. They can continue their education. If they need financial help, government will help them. Second, I would like to change women's and girls' freedom. All women and girls have freedom to go outside and take decisions related to their life, about how they want to their lifestyle, education, where they want to live, whom they want to marry, what they want to do in their future. If everyone is equal, so why this discrimination?
Girls, I will tell you one thing. Your decision, your choice, your feeling. My choice is very difficult for me. I am proud of myself and I am happy. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you very much.
So we heard the voice from two young people from India, and now we will hear two young people from Colombia. This second video was sent by Save the Children. And these two Colombians, one young man and a young woman, will speak in Spanish, but there are subtitles, so you will be able to easily follow them and what they are presenting. So we'll now watch our second video.
Lo más importante que hay que trabajar en Colombia, se me hace a mí, es gestionar mejores oportunidades para cada uno de los colombianos, que esos puedan acceder a un empleo digno, a una educación digna para que puedan sortearse un buen vivir. Mi mensaje es fortalecer e invertir. Fortalecer ya que existen en Colombia muchos proyectos a medias. Entonces terminar de completarlos y fortalecer los que ya están e invertir en todo ello que falta, en tanto oportunidades, empresas, mini empresas y emprendimiento.
Mi mensaje para los líderes del mundo con respecto al hambre y a la falta de agua en los territorios es que hay una mejor gestión de estos recursos para los territorios en donde no hay. Es decir, que se le invierta más a la infraestructura para que todas las regiones de Colombia puedan tener agua potable y segura y que todas tengan acceso a la alimentación, y con respecto a la educación, que todos podamos tener las herramientas necesarias para tener un aprendizaje digno, es decir, que en los lugares de difícil acceso en Colombia pueda haber siempre una institución educativa, y además para las personas que han vivido esa brecha educacional puedan tener diferentes materiales de aprendizaje para que puedan nivelarse con respecto a los niños de las ciudades centrales.
And our third video is that of a woman from Zambia who gives us some insight into the real situation in her rural village. She clearly comes from a rural setting in Zambia. So now the third video.
My name is Stali. I live in a remote village of Western Province of Zambia. Since 2015, the condition of people has improved a bit, but not to the expectations of the Sustainable Development Goals. For example, there was supposed to be a school and a health facility within a radius of 5 kilometers, but that is not the case in the community I live in. The most needed facilities in my community are health facilities, educational facilities, safe and clean drinking water, eradication of poverty through job creation and women empowerment, food security by smart agriculture that is resilience to climate change, gender equality through community sensitizations. The current programs that are happening in trying to achieve these set goals is construction of schools and health facilities, but this is more prominent in towns than in communities. My hope for 2030 is to see all children go to schools that are easily accessed at a radius of 5 kilometers. Rural community members can reach health facilities without facing a challenge of distance, availability of clean and safe drinking water, decent habitation for rural community members, especially women and girls, creation of employment for youth and women empowerment in trying to fight against poverty and hunger. Government to make strict policies in cutting down of trees, planting trees to cope with climate change. A community free from gender-based violence is my dream, and all people to live in peace and harmony with gender equality and equity. Thank you.
So we've now listened to these three groups, the three videos, and it's just interesting to note the way they repeat some of the same information and needs and lacks that we heard Diana present from the written information. Certainly gender equality is a huge issue. Education, job opportunities, especially for young people, and completion of projects, infrastructure projects. And infrastructure is also important, schools, hospitals, etc. So we hear certain ideas being repeated over and over again from across the globe. Now we will hear from two panelists. We've invited two people to share their insights and wisdom. Both of our panelists have on-the-ground experience of working with the marginalized to help these marginalized persons become protagonists of their own future. First, we will hear from Richard Quadros, a priest and social worker in India. For many years, Richard worked in the states of Orissa and Maharashtra to uplift the tribals and other marginalized groups there. At present, he is director of Sarva Vikas Deep in the area of Mumbai, Bombay, training people in sustainable livelihood and working on the empowerment of women and children. Richard, we welcome you, and the floor is yours.
The world economies have unified in their efforts to achieve the goals of sustainable development. Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. India is one of the partners in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 2030. The government of India and the United Nations, along with 193 member countries, have put goals till 2030 to achieve 17 goals. Ever since we have come from, that is 2000 to 2015, Millennium Development Goals to Sustainable Development Goals, we have 17 goals and 169 targets aimed at resolving global, social, economic, and environmental problems. As it is emphasized in Sustainable Development Goals, the aspect of sustainability, which was absent in Millennium Development Goals, the clarion call for global fraternity is to understand that sustainability is not only for poorer countries, but also for rich countries. So development is not alleviating poverty or hunger alone. Here we talk about holistic health, that is mental, spiritual, social, of a person, whether he or she is rich or poor. So in this context, how much we have progressed? Actually, we have progressed, but a lot to be achieved. In the backdrop of the trajectory of SDGs growth in India, we are slow. India's performance in SDG is slipped 3 spots, 117 to rank 120 on the 17 SDGs, much more behind other South Asian countries. India's performance compared to the world is okay, but India's overall performance needs a lot more to do. The Niti Aayog, or the Planning Commission, Niti Aayog is an abbreviation for National Institute for Transforming India Commission. The Planning Commission of India has ranked a few Indian states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Himachal Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, and Uttarakhand, Goa on the pedestal in terms of achieving the SDGs. And the poor performance is in Jharkhand and Bihar. To achieve the SDGs, India doesn't have SDG focused programs, but there are some initiatives which address SDGs. We have 5 sets of initiatives or good practices to achieve SDG in Indian language, especially in Hindi. First one is Sashakt Bharat and Sabal Bharat. In English would be Empowered and Resilient India. Here we address poverty, especially multidimensional poverty, hunger, housing, malnutrition, education, etc. Second is Swachh Bharat and Swasth Bharat, that is clean and healthy India. Here we try to address sanitation and health, but we are lacking behind. Third is Samagra Bharat and Saksham Bharat, that is inclusive and entrepreneurial India. Here we address financial inclusion, example, Jan Dhan Yojana, National Mission for Financial Inclusion to ensure access to financial services, namely a basic saving and deposit accounts, remittance, credit, insurance, pension in an affordable manner, etc. And Aadhaar card, that is unique identity card, and mobile-based empowerment. The fourth initiative is Satat Bharat and Sanatan Bharat, that is Sustainable India. Here we address environmental sustainability, example, forest conservation, reducing our emission, promotion of renewable energy. The fifth initiative is Sampann Bharat and Samruddh Bharat, that is prosperous and vibrant India. It is overall development of India's economy and ambitious vision to make India a 5 trillion economy, and the efforts are on, but we need to see on ground zero how SDG goals are reaching to its logical conclusion. Now, I would like to make a reference to SDG goal number 1, no poverty. No poverty is made up of 7 targets, 5 substantive targets and 2 means of implementation. Substantive would include trade, technology, financing, etc. Means of implementation would be implementation enabling factors, namely building systems, policies, etc. Poverty means we tend to believe income. Experts who deal with the topic poverty alleviation say there is multidimensional factors causing poverty. These factors could be poor health, lack of education, inadequate living standards, disempowerment, poor quality of work, threat of violence, environmental hazards, etc. There is no single cause for poverty. There are these systemic issues rather than just focusing on one issue of income while we speak about causes of poverty. In India, in the Esther years, it was $1.01 per day. $1.01 per day was the considered below poverty line. Now it is near 1.90 cent or $2 per day, or about rupees 200 and below per day would be below poverty line. According to the UNDP report, 1.1 billion, about 110 crore people in the world still live below poverty line. Over the years, India has rather done well. In 2005 to 2006, 55.1%. By 2015 to 2016, it was halved to 27.7%. And by 2019 to 2021, it was 16.4% of the people are below poverty line. The source is National Family and Health Services, NFHS. So in the beginning, from 2005, 1 in 2, by 2015-16, 1 in 4, and by 2019-2021, it was 1 in 6 Indians are below poverty line. In all 7 targets under the first goal, the intent is crystal clear that the poverty alleviation is the final goal. Take, for example, the target number 1.4. By 2030, ensure that all men and women, in particular, the poor and vulnerable, have equal rights to economic resources as well as access to basic services, ownership, and control over land and other forms of property, inheritance, natural resources, appropriate new technology, and financial services, including microfinance. There is a lot wrapped in this target to help the vulnerable and poor. A, basic services, namely water, sanitation, condition of dwelling, etc. And B, legal holdings or titles, namely property, land, resources. Indigenous people in India who need to have access to land and land rights and resources is very important. And general provision, access to finance and technology, etc. So according to my personal experience working with the indigenous people in India, and especially on land rights and other resources, there are, according to 2011 census, 5.8 million people, about 3.27% of tribal population has no access to rightful ownership of land other than homestead plots. Source is 2011 census of India. One of the most important causes of poverty and marginalization among the tribals in India is alienation of tribals' land rights, territory, and resources. In order to address the abject poverty and deprivation among the tribals, Right to Forest Land Act 2006 was enforced. Out of a total of 4.5 million individual and 189,547 community, that is 4.57 million claims filed, out of which 2.2 million individual claims and 113,996 community claims. A total of 2.34 million titles were distributed till 2023. That is 4.79 acres, that is 4.79 million acres land and land for individual beneficiaries, and 13.33 million acres community beneficiaries is distributed till 2023. And a total of 2.22 million claims are still pending to issue titles. This is one of the important aspects that we need to work on. Why? Because indigenous people, especially the tribals, the slogan is Jal, Jungle, Zameen. That is land, land rights, water rights, and forest rights. And all these rights are, some tribals are deprived of these rights. So as a result, we see a lot amount of inequality growing because they are landless agricultural people in the on ground zero. So I'm working in the state of Maharashtra now with and for particularly vulnerable tribe group PVTG, known as Katkaris, in the district of Raigad, Maharashtra. One of the major lapses in the implementation of the act is lack of political will at some levels of bureaucracy. The forest land right claims are registered in a bottom-up approach as to, first, it is registered in the village panchayat or village parliament, what we call in local language Gram Sabha, in the presence of a forest land right committee comprises 10 members or a maximum of 15 members, and from the same village panchayat. In many cases, the forest land right committee is unaware of its job description, its rights and duties. So as a result, there is a slow process of implementation of this particular act, that is Land Forest Land Right Act. So that needs to be worked on ground zero. As a result, we could see good number of tribals getting land and making and helping themselves to have sustainable development livelihood activities in the local level, which would be one of the paramount importance which we experienced during the COVID time, when people migrated to distant places in search of livelihood. What we call distress migration is one of the most vulnerable situation, because of which we thought of working on local level sustainable livelihood activities. So some of the issues for SDGs in India: number one, I've got 5 important issues that that I see personally needs to be addressed. We need environmental protection in the SDGs. Sustainable development is necessary to protect and preserve the environment, so conserve natural resources and prevent irreversible damage to ecosystem. Second is social equity. Sustainable development aims to address social inequalities, reduce poverty, and promote inclusivity and social justice. Thirdly, economic stability. Sustainable development ensures long-term economic stability by promoting sustainable economic practices, reducing dependency on finite resources, and fostering innovation and technological advancements. Fourthly, climate change mitigation. Sustainable development plays a critical role in addressing climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, promoting renewable energy sources, and adapting to the impacts of climate change. Fifthly, preservation of biodiversity. It seeks to conserve and protect biodiversity, recognizing its importance of ecosystem services, human well-being, and future generation. Now, what are the challenges?
Richard, can you wind up your presentation, please? We have a little bit.
I'm just focusing on the challenges. So the challenges to sustainable development would be, first one, lack of awareness on ground zero. Many people, including policymakers and the general public, lack awareness and understanding of sustainable development principles, hindering adoption of sustainable practices. Secondly, localization of the SDGs. How the local governance system are on board to achieve the goal, that is especially panchayat, that is village parliament, municipal corporations, district parishads are not so much involved in achieving these goals. Why? There is a lot of localization, there is a lack of localization, and these SDG goals are not properly dealt with the people or the kind of system that we have, especially on ground zero. If you read a bottom-up approach,
can you please summarize your challenges, please, Richard? Summarize your challenges.
Yeah. Now, finally, I would like to summarize the challenges. Number one is importance of defining indicators. Secondly, financing SDGs, and monitoring and ownership. And fourthly, measuring progress. These are the major challenges that I see while implementing the SDGs. Conclusion, finally, the 2030 agenda agendas promise to leave no one behind and to meet the needs of the most vulnerable. First is waiting to be fulfilled. I see the multi-dimensional poverty should be addressed, and only then we can see inequality existing in Indian society can be erased and phased out. We need to work hard, and together we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You certainly have a great deal of information and wisdom. It was very interesting what you presented, And I really noted one of the points that you made, which I think is essential, which is the lack of political will sometimes to accomplish the SDGs. What India is doing is clearly important, and I'm very impressed. And actually, I think many people would like some of your comments in writing so that we could learn more about that and perhaps learn from the example of India. Thank you, Richard. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you so much.
And then our last speaker is Marianne Broxton. Marianne is the main representative to the United Nations for the international movement ATD Fourth World. As an ATD Fourth World activist, she has supported projects that bring together people impacted by poverty and service providers so they can build together on collective experiences to explore sustainable solutions to poverty. Marianne, we look forward to hearing your wisdom as well. So Marianne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you so much. And I'd like to say thank you also to the Grassroots Task Force, part of the NGO community, for inviting me here for this important conversation, but most of all for bringing us all together for this conversation today. I really appreciated the questions that you offered as our guiding questions. And the first one made me think, when considering if living conditions have improved or worsened or stayed the same since 2015, we really have to ask, who fought? Who fought the conditions have got worse, better, or changed? Over that period of the past 7 years, official poverty levels have been lowered, risen, lowered again over the past 7 years. But people in poverty, and especially in deep poverty, have seen little relief or only momentary changes in their living conditions, depending on where they are and when in that time frame that it happened. But at the same time, corporations have gained record profits, and there's currently billionaires whose worth is more than some countries' GDPs. When we think about that, one person has more wealth than anybody else. We were asked to speak about our area, and that, as we've heard so far, the issues that I will speak of are universal, as we've heard mentioned from India and the different countries, and was mentioned in the Save the Children and the voices that were so eloquently presented from activists on the ground. They are the same. It's universal. It's around the world. But what I think is interesting about what I want to share with you, that it's important to note that the U.S. is a rich, developed country. Homelessness, hunger, searing inequality, deep poverty, and in some cases, it's rampant. It still exists here. So when we say, well, these are developed countries, that this isn't, they need more help, which is true. It's a universal problem when we talk about these things. So we need a universal response. Yes, COVID has become the line of demarcation, and it's in a lot of cases it's become the excuse that people give for inaction. COVID set us back. This happened, but there's always going to be something when we talk about why we can't make sure that people are fed, why people are experiencing homelessness and lack of housing, why people cannot receive a living wage. There's always going to be some excuse, and we cannot let that hold us back. The question of what is most important in our area and what is the urgent problem, it's hard to single out just one issue that is needed the most, because life doesn't work that way. Poverty itself doesn't work that way. We are multidimensional people. There's every aspect of our life are connected. So it's only right that poverty is multidimensional also. I would say that housing, or more so lack of affordable housing that is safe and clean, is dire need everywhere across this country. We currently talk about housing as being adequate, which honestly, I don't think it's a good enough definition, because it leaves that word up to interpretation. I want to share about a story about an activist, meaning a person that has direct experience of poverty, that we work with in New York City. They have what could be considered adequate housing, meaning they have heat, they have electricity, they have running water. Their apartment is on the 11th floor of a building. The elevator that goes up and down is broken at least once a week. They have trouble getting up and down. Anybody would trouble getting up and down 11 flights of stairs to access your home. But they do, they have difficulties walking, so that even makes it much more so. So is that really considered adequate if you cannot get to your home or if you cannot leave your home? And I mentioned this because when we talk about housing and when we talk about homelessness, there's actually no mention of homelessness in the SDGs anywhere in any of the 7 SDGs. Food is dire. We know we need to sustain life, but in a country that throws away 160 billion pounds of food a year, there's people still going hungry on a daily basis. Gender equality is one of the things that we also need that people on the ground talk about, that you've heard too universally, where Secretary General stated that it's going to take 300 years to reach gender equality. Women, girls, LGBTQ, and all non-conforming, gender neutral, and non-binary people demand and need pay parity, bodily autonomy, equal rights and protection under the law, and safety. Just to be able to be safe in your own being, to be the first thing before you can even approach the talk of, yes, I need equal pay. Yes, I need childcare. Yes, I need all these other things, but just bodily autonomy and safety, the most basic of human needs that we talk about. Debt forgiveness. So not only just for individuals to be able to go through, but for countries that are struggling under forced austerity measures by creditors, but to be able to do that, it forces dissolvement of the social programs that people need and are relying on every single day, and pushes people further into poverty. Climate, it definitely is a big issue. Air quality. The air quality depend on where that you receive depends again on where you live. If you live in a more economically stable area, I'll say, or if you live in a very low income, purposely marginalized and historically disinvested area, that depends on what type of air quality that you breathe. So these are all different things that people are talking about that they need, but it really comes down to systemic change. When we talk about paradigm shifts and shifts in power, to who are we listening to? Are we listening to people with a direct experience of poverty that have their insight and knowledge comes from experience? When we make policy, I always say people with a direct experience of poverty know how policy works because they live with the implications of it every single day. So when we talk about how are we going to fix these things, whose voices is included, whose voice is being left out, people that are in poverty, they know these actions that need to be taken because they live with these consequences of all these of gender, climate inaction, poverty, housing, lack of affordable housing. They live with these consequences of these things every day. And most likely they have ideas because they've lived through policy to say, this is how we make it better. And this is who we should be least living to. Debt money, as I said, debt influx, debt cancellation, there needs to be an influx of money. It's historically and present, persistently disinvested communities. But most of all, I say the one thing that we need, compassion and empathy. I know that sounds oversimplistic, but we need to start working from a place of mutuality, to the understand that we are all together. As I said, like my existence relies on your existence and how well you are doing, and so on and so on. We clearly saw that painted out to us during COVID, that if one person is not doing well, then none of us are doing well. And when we look at poverty and the SDGs, we have to realize it's not these countries, it's all of these countries together, how we take care of each other, provide for each other. One of the other questions is, what is the program that has been working? We saw in this country, just as around the world, so many programs that we were told for decades were not possible, all of a sudden overnight become possible. We saw distribution of cash to people in a form of a check from the government to make sure they got by. We saw an increase in food subsidies so people could be able to feed their families. We saw an extension in unemployment rates, in unemployment subsidies. So people, if they lost their job due to COVID, they could still have money in their pocket. We saw rent moratoriums, meaning that if you were unable to pay your rent because you were lost your job due to COVID, you would not be evicted from your home because there would be a freeze on that. And these are things that advocates have advocated for decades, but were told were never possible. But all of a sudden that we saw them happen overnight. We saw a child's tax credit be instituted that was fully refundable. So meaning if you were low income and had no income, the government would give you a tax credit, just as the same as they'd give those billionaires that I said that have a net worth of some countries' GDPs, they were receiving a tax credit to help sustain their children. And the one thing that they said people did with that tax credit from the research was purchase food, purchase a much needed clothing for their children or something for their home, like a washing machine or fix their car. So these are all things that were instituted that people need. I know I'm running short on time, so I'll try to wrap up a little bit. So we're going to go back and say, like, what are the things that are needed now? Again, universal basic income is working well. There are some communities on the ground in different areas in different states that have been giving people checks every month based on their income. No questions asked. Not as far as we need to know exactly what you're going to spend it on. We need to know exactly what you're doing it with it. But we trust you to know best what to do with it. Just like you saw with the tax credit, that you know what your family needs here to help you get along. So I would suggest that that is something that we need. Looking ahead to 2024, the SDG summit, the one thing that we always talk about it is that these are the issues. We all know the issues. We talk about them every day and at work. We just heard some issues here. People on the ground in their communities know the issues that they face every day. But the one thing we consistently hear is that we lack the political will. You know, the SDG summit is a time that we should all be together. And there's no excuse. You're in the room. You're here, talk together, work on these issues. Because I would say that people in poverty every day they cannot make excuses. You know, they get up every day, they need to figure out how they're going to take care of their children. How are they going to keep that roof over their head? How are they going to put food in their stomach? Where are they going to get the medicine to feed their child or an elderly parent or whoever? You know, they don't make excuses. They work on these issues and try to find a way to sustain themselves and their families. For a group of people that have the best access to policy making and the privilege to be able to make these policies to take care of people and make sure that they have their needs. We need to figure out how we can do this also. And again, like I said, I know it sounds oversimplistic, but it starts from a place of mutuality. That if one of us is not doing well, none of us are doing well. So I would like to end on that and pass it over to Barbara. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you very much, Marianne. That was great. And certainly, I think the multidimensional aspect of poverty is very, very important, which you stressed beautifully, that it's not just one thing, it's many things. Frequently, we think of poverty as only finances, but there are many other elements to it as well. And also the fact that the mutuality that we need to change policy, I think that's a very important thing for us to keep in mind. And then, as you said, the political will to see that our governments do what they need to do and to force them to keep their feet to the fire, if you will. So we don't have a lot of time, but we have a little time for questions. So we'll now take some questions from the you who are participating. You may direct your questions to one or more of the speakers, and If you have not already done so, you can write your question in the chat box, or you can raise your virtual hand, please. Not your physical hand, but your virtual hand, and we will give you the floor for that. Sister Veronica Brandt will be directing the questions. Veronica.
Just to say that quite a few of you have written questions in the chat box. So what I'm going to do is just pick a few themes, and then maybe our speakers and their closing words can also keep them in mind. There was the question about how has COVID affected development? And I know Marianne's responded a bit to that. Running through many of the questions, how can we encourage governments to complete projects? What can NGOs do that's not just the traditional lobbying of government or advocacy at the local level, but also working together? How can NGOs play a role at grassroots level to help people take their own responsibilities and work together? So a lot of the questions really focused on that. And I think, that could be an interesting thing to bear in mind as our speakers respond. What is concretely can NGOs do collaboratively at grassroots level and elsewhere to address these issues?
Thank you.
So I don't see other hands from the floor. Let's see if there are any. I don't see any raised hands. Okay, and I see another question has just come into the, how do we approach change? What policies are there? I think you could spend a week answering these, but maybe what we can do is throw it open to our three speakers and just see what you would respond to, especially focusing on the role of NGOs acting through advocacy at the local level.
Thank you. So first, we'll open it to our three speakers at this point. Maybe we can do it in order of your presentation. So Diana, if you would like to make any final remarks, we'd be glad to hear from you.
What I would say is, as you can see, the world is in a crisis, right? We are only at 12% in achieving the SDGs, which means that we have a lot of work to do. I think by working together, in listening to local people, in investing in local initiatives, and also by putting the voice of the people from the grassroots level at the top of global policies are very important. Then only then we can ensure independent communities, hence accelerating the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you very much. Richie, will you have a few closing remarks?
Yeah, I see NGOs play a very vital role in terms of building up the bottom-up approach system rather than imposing a top-down approach, because most of the NGOs work on ground zero. So we have better experience of working with the communities, individuals. So as a result, one of the important things that I see is a better collaboration without any conflict of interest, rather than creating, animating an interest with both government as well as non-governmental agencies. And that is very important in terms of fulfilling many of these government plans, especially the schemes that are coming up. Most of the time, these schemes are not known to the people. So NGOs can become the mediators or people who become catalysts to reach the message of the schemes, government information to the people, and empower them so that they also are taken on board to participate in the good governance of the government, and sustainable development system is built up there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your insights. And finally, Marianne.
So the one thing I would always say that is important as we as NGOs is participation of the people with the direct experience, because we are at the UN and the different bodies to represent them. But the most important part is to make sure that the people's voices are heard, to be able to share our space and share our access to space to people with the direct experience, so they can share their own voices. Because I was here today sharing some of it, but it's also nice to be able to have that, because they know best what they need in life to be able to, what policies need to be worked on. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to our three speakers. And now I invite Professor Lynn Healy, the main representative to the United Nations of the International Association of Schools of Social Work and a member of the Grassroots Task Force, to offer concluding remarks. Lynn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Barbara. This has been what I was asked to do, is sort of a kind of trying to pull this all together, which is very difficult because there was a lot here. And there was a lot more in the chat. I think maybe that's a some sort of an indicator of the success of the side event, because there's been a very lively conversation going over in the chat, which I only could glance at because I was trying to pay attention. So I hope some of this is captured, but we obviously had a very engaged audience who were participating in their own way, which I really appreciate. You know, I think there was a lot of rich information here. I really appreciated that Richard reminded us of the core definition of sustainable development, because this idea that we have to do development in a way that doesn't compromise future generations is so important. And sometimes I think we lose sight of it. But the message is that we have to keep environmental issues incorporated into all the things that we think about in moving forward on the Sustainable Development Goals. Several of the speakers who came to us through written testimony and video also, you know, brought forward the issue of conflict and violence. And being a social worker, I remember the words of the founder of our organization back in the 1930s, when she said, "War annihilates everything social work stands for." So if you think about the people who are living in conflict zones and just the repercussions around the world of the conflicts that we see, the big conflicts we see going on now, it's really devastating to development. It's de-development. And, you know, those are really pressing issues. Obviously, we heard about issues around gender equality coming through from a number of the testimonies. What also strikes me is that one of the problems with the SDGs, the 17 discrete statements, is that we can lose sight of the holistic approach. When I listened to the speaker from Zambia, she summarized at the end all the things she thought that were needed, and she was talking about SDGs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 13. So it's not a single approach. And if you look at, I didn't put down goal 10, which was the one on reducing inequality, but really all of those goals have to do with inequality, and which also Marianne so passionately spoke to the idea of inequality. Just in terms of trying to give, how do we move forward is the big issue. I really appreciated Marianne's comments on the COVID experience, because I'm afraid we're losing that. And I think the way she expressed it was perfect, that during COVID, we did things, at least in the United States, that people said couldn't be done. And those policies at the national level, and also some local initiatives, dramatically improve people's living standards and daily living at that time. I know in the state of Connecticut, when the schools closed, within 2 days, every town was feeding children with on the spot, come up with volunteer partnering with waivers of government restrictions and we fed children who were no longer getting school lunches. That combined with things like the child tax credit lifted enormous numbers of people out of poverty, but now we're going backwards. We're ending those policies. They're too expensive, or can we really trust the poor? You know, we need to reinstate all of these means-tested policies, and this is sad. And I think now that we know it can be done, we need to press. Though some of those initiatives also showed, which I think there was a comment in the chat that said governments can't do it all. What about encouraging people to do more themselves and engaging more from NGOs? And so I think also the COVID experience underscores the importance of partnership. And there are things that governments can do well that local initiatives can't do, like change tax policy. But there are things that local groups can do well that governments really struggle to do. And I guess my final comment on that would be the one thing that governments and the UN really struggle to do is to understand what is going on at the local level. They have little to no awareness of lived experience at the grassroots. What do people in poverty really experience, and what do they need, and what do they think are some of the solutions to these issues? I really was struck by one of the comments that came out that said development must be proposed, driven, and managed at the local level by local people. I think there were some encouraging messages. Certainly, I think the encouraging message that Marianne pointed out about the possibilities of policy, but I also was really struck by the many statements about education. And I think an emphasis on education is an expression of hope for the future, because there's a belief that through education, things can change both for individuals and for their communities and the larger society. And I also was very much struck by the passion of youth. And some of the youthful speakers on the video were very, very motivating. So I know I want to thank everyone who stuck with this. And I think almost everyone did from the looks of the number of people in the session. And now we're going to turn to some final words from people at the grassroots. We have another very brief video.
The Sustainable Development Goals touch on the issues that are causing much pain and destruction to our country, to our world, to humanity.
We would like to see these goals reached, but it is not going to happen unless countries take these goals very seriously, believe in equality and humanity, and in our planet Earth.
I'm from Bangladesh as a labor activist. If we really want to achieve the Agenda 2030, the SDG goal, and all 17 goal is very important for the working people, especially the women's workers. We need respect and dignity.
Giving People to Grow Foundation are using these goals as our thematic areas, and under these goals we are providing non-formal education to out-of-school children, and we are also providing scholarships to school, colleges and university students, supporting youth to acquire skills and get employed. And we are also promoting interfaith harmony among diverse religions through cricket matches. And we are creating awareness among women, youth and children on causes of climate change. And also we are training them to do kitchen gardening, because it will not only give them fresh food, but it will also improve the quality of air in their surroundings.
Basic fundamental right need to be assured. The food, clothing, housing, education, recreation, social protection, and recreation and children education is more important. Thank you.
An encouragement that UN and our government stand the chance to discuss and to dialogue with these companies to find alternative. Thank you.
I want to thank all of you for your participation in our side event today. We heard the voices from people on the ground, and we heard from excellent panelists as well. Let us take to heart the words we have heard. We can achieve the SDGs, but it will take the effort of everyone to do so. We only have 6 years to accomplish Agenda 2030 and the SDGs. We will bring our voice to the World Social Summit in 2025, and hopefully to the Summit on the Future this year, so that we can assure that truly no one is left behind. I thank you all for being with us.